As good as the music.
It's good for you to get out there, yeah.
All right.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Can the folks on Zoom hear us? Jennifer, is the chat saying they can? Okay. Testing.
Yes.
Yeah, they can?
Go.
Okay, great. Ooh, sorry. All right, well, we have a smaller crew in person today than we had thought we would, but we have a lot of great friends online, so we have a good wave over here, for friends in the room that we can see. Just a quick, explanation for our hybrid environment this morning before we dive in. For those not in the room and on Zoom, we have a little guy called an owl, literally looks like an owl up here. And he follows you as you speak. And so for those friends on Zoom, sometimes you might feel a little like motion sickness when people are walking around. So just be mindful of that if you need to listen instead of look, or we're gonna have the different videos pinned, but, and then there's also another camera that's kind of showing the audience. So that is what we have going here. We really encourage people to use the chat. So we'll be moderating the chat and sharing with the people in the room what's shared there. And we in advance thank you for your patience of this hybrid environment today. So we're excited that we're all together. And in the Zoom as well, if you ever can't hear us or there's echoes or anything, please make sure to let us know and we'll stop and get readjusted. All right. So my name is Abby Oakart. For anyone I haven't met yet, I'm new-ish to the Fen at this point in month 3. So this is my first official workshop where I get to make the introduction. So I do have some notes, so I appreciate your grace for me referencing my notes. But because we are in person, we did want to start today with a land acknowledgement, and just to give a second to pause and to acknowledge the land that we're standing on before we dive into our content. And so I want to begin our time with this acknowledgement. First, that we are on land today that was stolen from Native people, the first people of the region, the indigenous peoples of the Muckleshoot, Puyallup, and many other Coast Salish tribes, and many others who likely use these lands for daily life, ceremony, and gathering, as we are gathered here today as well. I want to honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who were its first inhabitants and are tied to the land through history and culture. I want to thank those who are caretakers of this land, who have lived here and continue to live here. I also want to recognize the ways that genocide and colonization have caused displacement and harm to their communities, past and present. And while this country was built on stolen land, we also must acknowledge that this country was built with the stolen labor and exploited labor of many people of color. Some who were abducted, some who were coerced, and some who were enslaved. This was the foundation of the American economic system, which continues to benefit from this legacy of exploitation today. So I want to start our time together by centering these facts that are not just historical events, but also are reflected in the systems, policies, and practices and biases today, and have current repercussions for all of us in terms of gaps in opportunity, gaps in access, and gaps in wealth. So we can't hold the kind of conversations we're having today without acknowledging these hard and painful truths. Systems were built to strengthen some and exclude others, and they continue to operate as designed today. So I encourage us to look for ways to repair the harm that's been done, even beyond just these kind of acknowledgements. One particular place we like to draw our attention to is the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, who's working to support Native communities across the state. So I encourage you to learn more about their work and how you can get involved. There are many organizations that are by and for Black, Native, and Latinx people who are engaging in this work, so those who are with us today. And so thank you for taking that moment with me this morning. Ryan, you mind, or does someone have a poster? All right, so a quick introduction is to Ben, or the Financial Empowerment Network. I know everyone in this room knows us, and online probably as well. But just in case, we are the Financial Empowerment Network that's hosting this today with ICF and the CFPB, so we're so excited to have you all here with us. The Financial Empowerment Network, you'll see here, our mission is to advance financial empowerment through partnerships. And so at the Financial Empowerment Network, we don't do the direct service, but we work to support those of you that do the direct service. And one of the ways that we do that is through professional development opportunities of monthly workshops, and also our financial coaching network, which is a great opportunity to attend once a month to gather together with other coaches who are doing financial empowerment, financial education, and then anything money related. So we invite all of you to attend those. You will see on this screen a big long list of all of our past workshops and a QR code or the link there that you can access our past workshops. We have all of those on YouTube. They're all free. They're all really great resources, so make sure to take advantage of that. And then also, we can put a link in the chat as well around the Financial Coaching Network. So if you're not already a part of the Financial Coaching Network, we'd love to have you at those meetings. And I think that is all I have. That was just a quick intro from Ben, and we are excited to be here with you today. Excited to have everyone online with us as well. It's gonna be a good day. For those of you that were with us yesterday, we know we're in for a treat, and so I will turn it over to Devin.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Day 2. Driving to the convention in Washington State. How about it? Awesome. All right, so we are so glad that you all are here, and also those of you on Zoom. So thank you so much. We're gonna make this as interactive as possible, so everyone feels included in this conversation. I am really excited that we have the CFPB with us here today. Again, we thank Jill Wheeler for being here yesterday and all the contributions she made. And today we have Shana Bennett, who's with us today, and she's going to be leading the discussion on the CFPB about the Reentry Companion Guide. So at this point in time, let us meet Shana, and so give her a round of applause. Shana Bennett.
Feel like I'm on a game show. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So good to be, and I love being introduced by Devin for that exact reason. It does feel very much game showy. But I promise you we'll have a great time today together. And what am I
Looks
doing?
like if you stand there, your back is to the, how's it go, Frank?
Where-
Look the owl in his eyes.
Yeah.
I look the owl in the
Yeah.
eyes. Okay, that is very disturbing, but I will do that. Okay. Thank you for training me while I'm walking. Okay, so as Devin said, today we're gonna spend some time talking with you all and really thinking together about the importance of financial empowerment, financial literacy, when it comes to working with people who have justice involvement. So we're gonna talk about our focus on Reentry Companion Guide. For those of you who were here yesterday, you went through the entire Your Money, Your Goals toolkit. This is a companion guide that really reflects a lot of that, and specifically focuses in on people with lived experience, have had justice involvement. And I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to make sure I start with the most important part. So this is a federal disclaimer. And this basically states that all of the presentations that you're gonna see today, the conversations we'll have, are being made by Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also known as CFPB, also known as the Bureau, as a representative to either myself or my colleagues from ICF. So basically, it doesn't constitute legal interpretation, guidance, or advice of the Bureau. Any opinions or views that are stated by the presenter are the presenter's own and may not represent the Bureau's views. This document also has a lot of links, and references to third-party resources. These links and references don't necessarily reflect the Bureau's endorsement of those third-party views. Basically, or the products or services that they are offering, but we have not also vetted them, but we do have them as part of our presentation. So please kind of keep that in mind as we move forward. And I think I'm supposed to turn it over to Rich now. He gives me a thumbs up. This works out well today. So he's going to be able to talk about our training objectives today and do further introductions beyond what we just heard 2 seconds ago.
Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone?
Yeah. I hope everyone is well. My name is Rich Lewis, and I'm having the privilege of being here today to tell you a little about what we're going to do and a little bit about ourselves. And we're going to have fun while we're doing it at the same time, because it's my first time in front of an owl. I've been hearing about the owls, so I'm glad to finally meet the owl. First of all, I noticed that the owl seems to put on 25 pounds. All being in the virtual audience, I'm skinnier than I actually look, and in better shape like I used to be 20+ years ago. But our training objectives here today are really about understanding some of the content and focusing on reentry. And this is one of my favorite topics in the history of the world. But we want to be able to identify some moments when you could introduce these tools to the people you serve, because at the end of the day, it's all about the folks that we serve, whether they be folks who are in prison, their children and families, something I'm really passionate about. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. And or the service providers, you all who are on the front lines of reentry every single day. So we want you to be able to use these tools to help people really take steps to reach their financial goals. And we're going to talk an awful lot about some of the challenges that are unique to folks who are returning home from prison. The second thing that we really want to do is we want to understand how this resource material really complements the wonderful work and information that you do every day. And the Your Money, Your Goals Toolkit and the CFPB website. So all of the resources that are available really complement the work that you do. They really augment and provide you all the tools that you can use for the folks that you serve. And finally, we want to really just increase our understanding of the CFPB and some of the resources and be able to refer folks to resources. You know, in our field, we oftentimes reinvent the wheel. We do it way too often. There are a tremendous amount of resources out there to help folks who are focusing on reentry. And that's what I really like about this project. So we'll see how that goes. We're in the right direction. All right. Our team. Let me tell you a little bit about our team, because I think this is a fantastic team. And I'm not just saying that because they sign my invoices. I'm saying it because they are really good people. I'm going to start off with Shana, who you heard from a minute ago. She is a senior policy analyst with the CFPB, the leader of our presentation team. She's a leader. She's an innovator. And in addition, she is a criminal justice subject matter expert. One of my favorite people. She's a lot of fun too, by the way. Shana was also the long-term acting director of the National Institute of Corrections. So when I see her, I always think, wow, she's accomplished a lot. And such a youthful person. So this is fantastic. She is truly an expert, and she uses that with our federal partners, which is very important to have that perspective. So Shana is absolutely fantastic. Welcome, Shana. Glad to work with you again. Devin is truly a master trainer, and I'm just glad that these folks let me hang out with them. But Devin is part of our ICF team. Not to mention that ICF is an international consulting firm that partners with our federal clients to really solve social problems in our space. But Devin, he's a fantastic policy analyst. In addition, he is the director of financial training programs and services. And in addition, he is truly a subject matter expert on all things financial and all about financial empowerment. I learned something new from Devin every time that we're together. So he is absolutely fantastic.
And it's at the Faith Finance Center at the University of Washington that he also runs. And I think if you're gonna do financial empowerment, you gotta have faith. So he's a fantastic person. You're gonna hear an awful lot from Devin, later on, today. So that's our training team. We're happy to be here. And, I forgot me. I should probably say a little bit about myself. My name is Richard Lewis, and I work for a group called ICF. And I've been hanging around the criminal justice space for 25+ years. This is when you see it on the federal. My area is criminology and criminal justice. I have served in this space, doing evaluations for the Department of Justice for many years, whether it be the National Institute of Justice or Bureau of Justice Assistance, other groups throughout the DOJ. Many years ago, when I first started in my career, I was actually at National Institute of Justice, NIJ. But I spent most of my time, a lot of the time, working for a group called Prison Fellowship. You probably heard of Prison Fellowship if you do work in this space. I was the National Director of Research and Evaluation, where we try to evaluate faith-based programs and evaluate the empirical evidence to show that they do indeed work and improve outcomes for people who get out of prison. And in addition, I'm passionate about folks who are returning home from prison and improving outcomes for them and their families. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. And now I think I'm going to turn this over to my partner in crime, Shannon, who you just heard about a moment ago. She's going to tell us a little bit more about the CFPB.
Thank you much, Rich. And partner in crime obviously has a different connotation here today, so, but happy to be a partner in justice with you anyway. Okay, so CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I can't see hands online, but I'm still gonna ask anyway, and in the room. How many of you have heard of us before? Have heard something? When I say it out loud, it makes sense, at least some degree, okay. All right, so CFPB is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Our mission is focused in on federal consumer financial law, and we ensure that the markets and everything related to the consumer financial marketplace are fair, transparent, and competitive. Basically, we want anybody who's going to be touching the financial space to know their rights, to be able to identify what's going to work for them, to be able to evaluate it. So having things fair and transparent, having competition in the marketplace is really critical. So basically, level the playing field. That's our job. And I'm part of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Community Affairs Office, and we focus out of the Office of, or Division, I should say, of Research Monitoring Regulations. So we're, as every federal agency has lots and lots of different layers. So our office is under Research Monitoring and Regulations. We serve populations that are going to be near and dear to your hearts. And these are folks who may lack full affordable access to financial services. So people who have low to moderate incomes, have low wealth, otherwise are financially underserved or vulnerable. And obviously, folks who've been touched by the justice system, criminal legal system, are in this space. Often there's many barriers, there's not many challenges. And so having this population, which is near and dear to my heart, part of our Office of Community Affairs focus is really perfect. So we are so focused on supporting consumers. So there's so many entities out there that, are focused on big business, on big companies. Our job is to focus on the individual consumer. We provide consumers with up-to-date information and resources, trusted resources that help to protect and manage their finances. We have a fabulous website. If you haven't gone there, we're going to refer to it a lot today, but it is on the slide and will be on the links that we provide you later as well. And I go to this site all the time. Our website really does answer lots and lots of questions and gives you, again, trusted resources that have been vetted, they're viable, they've really been looked at thoroughly, and you can trust what's there. So when it comes to folks who've been involved in the justice system, where does that kind of overlay with some of our broader efforts, out of CFPB around enforcement and supervision. We also, supervise and enforce the laws around, financial products. This is where you'll see some overlap with the JI spaces, I would say, the justice involved individual space. First, we did a report in 2022 that really, if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend looking at it. This report is around the financial ecosystem that exploits families at every stage. This basically walks all the different touch points that somebody who has justice involvement has a financial product associated with it in some way, shape, or form, or has a financial harm. So from arrest to conviction to sentencing to being incarcerated, whether it be in jail or prison, being under community supervision, all of these places and spaces have financial products that are associated with them, oftentimes where consumers have no choice. So that report really outlines that well. It's actually the report that got me to want to work with the CFPB. So it was really groundbreaking. It's referred to in a lot of major studies and resources. Second, probably our biggest case involving justice impacted individuals is we took action to halt prepaid card service providers from siphoning government benefits. That's a lot of words, and it basically says that basically CFPB held accountable a company that was requiring, was requiring all of the gate money that people have when they left prison or jail to go on a prepaid card. And those prepaid cards, they didn't have a choice what they used. They used them, it cost money. If they didn't use them, it cost money. If they, just let it sit dormant, there were fees associated. And they didn't have another means by which to have basically their gate money, their money coming out of their commissary accounts when they left to go in their pocket. So sometimes you get a check, sometimes you get a direct wire. If you had an existing bank account, everybody is forced to use these prepaid cards. So that was one of the big cases that I think would resonate with all of you. We've also, second case too, same thing. And then the most recent, which was just a few months ago, we ordered Global Link GTL, for those of you who may be familiar with the name, to pay $3 million for illegally freezing and draining payment accounts for people who were incarcerated. So say I was somebody who had a son in prison, I sent him money and it got frozen for some reason. There was something happening in the facility, there was an investigation, something froze the account. And while that happened, it was slowly siphoned off. The young man, my son, may have gotten released and that money, because it was still frozen, just became dormant. And when it became dormant over time, and that money just kind of disappeared. And so those are the things, again, protecting people. If it's a lot of money, it's a little money. If to somebody who's leaving prison or jail, that $50 can be life changing. So making sure that we hold people accountable, hold those companies accountable when they are doing things that further harm who are already going to begin with. So now that I've bummed you all out, we want to spend some time hearing from you all, and it's going to be harder for me, so I know I'm going to rely on you. Thank you. Thumbs up. For what's happening now in your jurisdictions and in your areas around justice impacted individuals here in Washington. Why are you here?
I guess some of them feel like it's just a never ending cycle. They don't have enough sources or resources, I should say, or folks to help out. And that's kind of why I'm here, I guess you would say, because I deal with folks who come into the branches and the banks from time to time. I have family members who have been affected by this. I myself have been affected by the justice system. And so it's one of those where speaking to them and just hearing some of the struggles, a lot of it has to do with financial decisions. It's like, yo, I'm only doing this because I have no other option, because I can't get a job, because no one will give me a bank account, because of whatever it may be. So it's just one of those where the more resources and more options we can have for them, I think it'll just be a lot better, so that we can break the cycle of the financial impairment of them.
Oh, you gave me a new term, breaking the financial cycle of impairment. And that's a big, real thing that folks just look for a way to survive. We want to get people to go from there to thrive. And so that financial empowerment, that financial information really helps give people the tools to do that, so. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
We have a few answers in the chat. Someone mentioned there's many challenges from housing to jobs. Someone else said, I had a client who successfully had a charge expunged, but it remained on their background check until just recently, costing them several job offers. And if those online, if you wanna raise your hand, you can unmute and we can hear you in the room as well. So use the chat or raise your hand.
And I love that. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the other implications, that people who have lived experience when they come out of prison or jail, or on community supervision, even having an arrest record. You know, it cuts off opportunities for employment, for housing, for basically earning. We talked about that this morning, even in some small conversations on the side. Yes, more from Ellen.
All right. All right, we're gonna have Abby M unmute and share with us.
Hello, how's the volume of me speaking? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
yep, you're doing great.
Okay, great. This is a space, I'm a financial coach, and we're a workforce development council with a 2 years old financial empowerment program. And working with justice impacted people is something we really want to get more involved in. And just statewide, I feel like, you know, there's definitely been a lot of progress made in trying to get these services to people, but there's still a long way to go. Like, we don't really know how or where to find people to work with. So, and there's just such a need, and we really, you know, want to be helping folks be able to become, you know, financially stable when they rebuild their lives. So I think there's a lot being done in our state, and there's still a long way to go.
Abby, that is fabulous, and really connecting those dots of, we know we want to work more in the space, we know there are people doing work in the space, but connecting each other to each other is really, really critical. And one of the things I've said for decades is that we're always stronger together. No one individual or no one agency or, you know, community advocacy group or community resource has all the answers, but together we do. We have a lot of them. And particularly when we're bringing people in from having lived experience and asking, what do you need? And that's one of the things that, you know, particularly when you're in either government agencies or in community-based reentry groups, sometimes we don't ask the people who actually know what they need, what is it? And actually listen and hear and then try to find things that are going to help to address that. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Abby, and partnerships are absolutely critical. Others, either from in the room or online, and I'm looking at my colleagues for time. Rich really wants the microphone.
Hi, I'm imagining that the chat is including issues that you already mentioned, because you know, money matters. And it impacts every single part of our lives when you're returning home. And everything from housing, employment, education. An area that comes up a lot is health and mental health is a really big issue for folks who are returning home. And money impacts that. Transportation, child support, we've already mentioned records and expansion. So the bottom line is that money certainly does matter. It impacts every aspect of the lives of those who are returning home. And in addition, it takes key community collaborations to really provide resources that individuals need, because no one organization has that kind of depth or breadth to solve so many social problems.
And that's why I give them that. Why it's not over there, and everywhere. Others from the chat or others in the room, that what brought you here today and what are you hoping to gain?
Just to continue a thread from the conversation we had yesterday, and also some of our previous conversations on justice impacted individuals. We know that the more systems that you interact with, the harder daily decisions become, and it's harder to think of a group that has to interact with more systems than folks who are interacting with the justice system. And so when systems make life complicated, it is hard to put the burden of effort on the individual. As you mentioned, it takes a village, it takes a community support, and, one of the things that is difficult is finding the levers of our work where we can make long-term, systemic changes rather than, beating our head against the wall, trying to solve the same problem over and over again.
Absolutely, solving problems shouldn't be as hard as it is sometimes, right? You know, even the complicated problems, sometimes are a little easier when you break them down and work with others to solve them. So I love that, recognizing how daunting walking through, entering into communities where they've been on, maybe it's been a couple of months, maybe it's been 20 years. And so much changes in a very short period of time, and then being able to trust the systems that put you where you are or were is very, very daunting. And there is a lot of lack of trust in organizations and financial institutions and government institutions. All of us were trying to help. We have to get past the barrier of fear and distrust first. And that does come from trustworthy information, from being a partner with them and helping them walk through doors that may not have ever been opened to them before. So, and we have one more from online.
Yeah, one more comment online, someone mentioning fees. I said figuring out how to pay court fees, paying the court for their time during their prison sentence.
And so many more, absolutely. Fines and fees, anything related to justice involvement, you know, whether it be a court fee, whether it be an electronic monitoring fee, whether it be, you know, driver's license suspension fees, and all of these different pieces have a financial component. Nothing in our lives is either absent of data or absent financial issues. Like everything's connected in that way. And so helping people to navigate how to prioritize, how to communicate what is possible and what's not possible. Getting on payment plans or getting income reduced, fees is also an option. So there's so many things that, again, just so hard to navigate for people who have lived experience and come out and just trying to figure out how to get that house, get that job, you know, and just navigate. So I love all the comments online, and yes, Barry.
All right, when you piggyback on, can you hand her, just so you can hear that one.
I wanted to piggyback on something that was said there. So we had heard in an earlier session about, when people access their driver's license, when there was either court meeting or, collections. And so Department of Licensing heard that and they created a one-pager. So I'll make sure I send that to Reentry, have it submitted again, if anybody wants it. And they have frustrated calling customer service not getting answers. There's other pathways to find out like which, because you could have a part of information, like where it's from, how to get that information and the process. So, it's not the answer, but it's these pathways.
Thank you, Erin. And those pathways matter. I mean, so much is being thrown at somebody when they're releasing and trying to figure out what to do next. And to have trusted people like you all who want to work in this space and want to provide services, you really can be that key tool that can help people go grounded and figure out, okay, what's next? What's the next step? And do that on their own, but with your coaching and with your testing. And I totally getting excited about all the answers, so I've already gone off script and calendar and timing and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna do a quick, little bit of a fact drop, if you will. So why do we care about reentry at CFPB? You know, there's more than 70 million people in this country that have a criminal record. That's one of every 3 adults. Not even looking at the juvenile system, that has different connotations, but 70 million people who either have an arrest record, a conviction, have had a sentence, have been released. It's 1 in every 3. And as we said, it has huge impacts on both employment and housing, huge financial challenges, background screening reports, obviously create barriers for employment for many people. There's consumer and criminal justice debt, which you all have mentioned as well. The impact on families from missed wages, from debt that was accumulated, even from families who have been sending their loved ones money while they are incarcerated for many, many years. It might have been a choice between, do I send my husband, you know, $30 for his commissary account, or do I take a life out? And that's a hard choice when you are trying to support somebody who is incarcerated. So all of these, this is just a handful of the impacts of being involved in the criminal justice system, and there are many, many more. And they seem, as somebody who has gone through those kinds of experiences that you or your loved ones have, it's incredibly, incredibly challenging, and you just feel like, where do I go from that? A few facts which probably I need to update again. There are, well, in 2019, there were 2.1 million adults that were in jail or prison, and about 4.4 million were under community supervision, so either probation or parole, some sort of community supervision. People are booked into jail about 8.7 million times each year. There are more than 600,000 people who are released from prison each year. And more than 70 million people, as I mentioned before, have a criminal record. These impacts reach and extend to family members, friends, communities. We know that many communities are much more disparately impacted than others, particularly communities of color. You're going to see so much more attention for arrest and conviction in communities of color than in like suburbs. And these are things that we've seen in research studies and these over many, many years. It doesn't make it any less painful or any less daunting to happen. But there's good news. The information and tools that are in the reentry guide, the Focus on Reentry guide, are incredibly helpful in helping people with criminal records. They can identify financial challenges to successful transition. So these are things that can be happening in the jail or the prison well before, actually on day one, well before release, where people can figure out, hey, what were some of the issues that came up? Many jurisdictions that use a risk needs assessment as part of their intake process have a financial component. I don't know if you all do this, but they have a financial component as part of that risk needs assessment for anybody who's being booked into a prison or jail. And oftentimes the staff in those facilities don't necessarily have the resources themselves to be able to help somebody with, financial issues while they're incarcerated. If my heart was the happiest it had ever been, is everybody in every facility made financial empowerment part of their reentry plan from day one. Not 2 weeks before they leave, but day one. They can also obtain documents related to identification to help ease the transition process. Seems like everybody, including when you go to the airport, needs a smart ID now. So having driver's licenses prior to release, that would also be awesome. But even if you couldn't get the driver's license while incarcerated, getting your birth certificates and records would help you to get that and get out. Developing a cash easy for me to say, a cash flow budget by tracking income and spending, also including tracking public benefits that would be available to people when they release. Identifying and prioritizing, without that before, both debt arising from involvement in the criminal justice system, so fines and fees, as well as consumer debt. Having a lot of debt is very, very daunting. To be able to figure out, hey, what am my prioritization of that? Can be incredible, and that's part of the reentry guide as well. Accessing and reviewing credit reports. Out of curiosity, how many folks online and in the room have access to your own credit report? Show of hands. Okay. I'm sure we're getting hands raised online as well, but that was something 15, 20 years ago people didn't really think about much. And certainly don't still today think about much when it comes to incarceration. And knowing what's on there, particularly people come into prison or jail, getting a copy of that, critical, and also even better, putting a freeze on people's credit while they're a couple of it today, but putting a freeze on there would be hugely impactful for people who enter the system. And then last, understanding the background screening process and individual rights when applying for jobs. These are things that many of you probably hear most about with the clients you work with. And I made it to the end, and it's relatively on time. That's a first. And that's
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Thank you. Let's bring this home for a minute. There was a time where when people were coming out of incarceration, that they may have ended up at church or a community center or some sort of organization or network that were providing resources for those that are trying to just get things back together. And so I found myself in a situation where I had gotten a referral. This was back when I was really actively doing coaching, financial coaching. And here's what happened. This client comes in, he had just gotten released. He had no job. He had no housing. He told me all about his LFOs, legal financial obligations. And he wanted to buy a house. That was his deal. When he was incarcerated, he felt like the best thing for him to do as a consumer was to get himself on the path to homeownership. Now, here's what's interesting. I didn't have any of these tools back then. But here's what's a really awesome testimony. What I had to do was help him understand what the rules were. So I'm talking to all you financial coaches that are also online as well. You guys know that it's one thing to say, oh, get a job. Right? Build your credit, have some savings, and then hopefully things will work out. Well, you know, that's all fine and good, but Shannon, you talk about credit reports. Oh yeah, we pulled his credit report, and guess what? He had a bunch of stuff on there that wasn't his. You guys know what I'm talking about. He had identity theft. He had a bunch of accounts on his credit report that he did not incur because he was incarcerated when those guys were open. Very easily to be, you know, disputed. But the point is, and you guys know, those of you who do this all the time, you know that you gotta wait until the documentation says that it's all good, right? Even though you've got proof that he was not the one that did it, but you have to wait until it comes off the credit report. And with that being said, having money conversations in those kind of scenarios are not easy. This is something that we have to understand, that we're talking about people that, for whatever reason, they found themselves where they were. But now things are different, trying to get back on track. But now we've got to navigate the barriers. So having a money conversation is not the easiest thing to do. I want to ask those on Zoom, how many of you right now have had an experience where you were faced with someone that was coming back into the community, but had multiple barriers? Okay, I see a lot of hands not even here in the room. Does anybody on Zoom want to comment on that? Now.
All right, I see, Pippa, you have a yes. I don't know if that means you want to come off mute and share, but there's some yeses,
Yeah.
Maya, Pippa,
Yes.
Abby, and I have 2 clients right now with those barriers. Destiny, yes, all the time. Is anyone willing to come off mute and share a little bit? Not looking like we have any takers.
No.
But lots of yeses in the chat. Yeses, difficulty finding the job, so it sounds like,
Yeah. Yeah, the point is that these are real issues that we have to face. And we can't just be sitting across the desk and not have an answer and not have a way to address it. We gotta help people to move forward. So having the money conversation is very important. So here's what's interesting. These tools here will help to bridge that gap. So for those of you who said, yeah, we've got this problem, we've seen these barriers, but here it is. What we have to do is help them to see exactly what is possible. That is really the goal here. Because we can say, like I said, we can say go get a job, we can say save money, we can say all that, but we have to navigate the barriers. So we have to look at, well, what does this picture really look like? So that is the first tool in the companion guide, is my money picture. Okay, so we're trying to help them to identify exactly what it is that they're looking at. So we know that we have to help people to go from point A to point B. But the key to doing that successfully is to clearly identifying what point A is. Point A has to be 100% clear, and that's what the My Money picture does. Now, notice it says preparing your money situation before or during incarceration. Well, you know what's interesting, he didn't know that his identity was being stolen while he was there, right? They're not getting their credit reports when they're incarcerated. But they are incurring debt, they're incurring interest, they're incurring payments and all that, especially if someone did something in their name. The other thing, we have scenarios like that, we have to be able to help them to understand what it means. And then navigate the pathway to get it resolved. So this, in my opinion, is one of the most important things that we can do. We can have them look at the My Money picture and get a vision for what it is. And then, here's the other thing, what about protecting their money? Hard to do when you're not in control of things, but we have to make sure that we can help them to have a way to get out of some of the things that we're in. And by the way, you all know that the onus of the responsibility a lot of times is on the consumer to prove that it wasn't you who was the actual perpetrator of the thing. Yes, I told you all yesterday that I had, 2 instances of identity theft in my own life for myself. So I understand that process. But here's the other thing, we want to also discuss values around money. You know, sometimes, when people are incarcerated and they're reading a lot of stuff, and we want to make sure that, you know, they can create their own kind of philosophy of how they want to move forward. And that's one thing, those of you who coach, you know this, we do everything from a client-led perspective, right? It's all about client-led. So we help them to identify well, what's important to you, and then we help move that. And again, we said yesterday that all of this information is not a curriculum, it is a toolkit. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to the precise tool that is absolutely necessary for that particular conversation. And then, of course, learning what documents are needed while transitioning from incarceration. A lot of times we need ID, right? Actually, Dr. Rich is gonna come talk about that later. But the point is, these are the things that we can talk about, and what's great about these things are in the companion guide. Now, I want to share something with you about this. That My Money picture document I was referencing, you know, when somebody is able to talk about their values around money, that's huge. That's huge. Now, the whole thing about that, now, when you get the tool, you'll see what I mean. But when you're actually identifying values to financial, then what happens is you're establishing kind of a decision-making process. Because if this is something I value, Daniel, if I value the ability to be autonomous with my money and how I spend my money, especially after coming out of incarceration, I value that. People were telling me what to do for so long. Now I get to have this autonomy. So if autonomy is the value, then now what we're gonna do is help them to support that value in the financial decisions that they make. See, that's what we do in coaching, right? Again, we're just kind of applying the coaching context to this information. Now with that, okay, we also want to think about, well, what is that process? What does that really look like? And all the other tools in the companion guide are designed specifically to help uncover that. Yeah, so this is kind of a different execution than the standard financial empowerment toolkit. Now, it's all good, but again, this is really contextualized for this particular population. This is a whole different conversation than what we're having with people that have not experienced that. Okay, and we're gonna still invite comments from the chat, if anybody wants to chime in on any of this. Now, the other thing is, notice here, says depending upon the situation, you may want to ask the person to include members of their family. Somebody tell me why that is important. Why do we want to have other people in the family involved in this process?
Hold you accountable.
Hold them accountable? Yes. What else?
Support.
Support.
another support in the chat.
Yes, support, yes, absolutely. Yes, here's the thing, we don't want people to fall off. You know, you heard of, you know, people getting momentum, financial momentum. You know, getting that bank account open, getting back into the workforce, getting that job, right? Then moving themselves forward. We want to keep them in momentum. And so having some support from the family, and here, let me say this. Family could be anybody, whether they're blood related or not. I got a whole bunch of people I call family that is not my cousin. Right? Right? Right. So here's the thing. This sheet looks like this. This is the actual worksheet. And for those of you online, I know Abby may put the link in the chat. You guys can access any of the tools that we talked about today. And those of you in the room, you have one in front of you in the packages there. But here it is, my only picture worksheet. Notice this. Notice this first question. Do you have dreams for you or your family that require money to make that happen? Very important question. Do you have or will you have a safe and affordable place to live? Do you have or will you have reliable transportation? And do you have or have you applied for benefits, including Medicaid, Medicare, or other health care coverage? Notice these questions, the nature of these questions are very, very value centric. And so I just wanted to share that with you, but this is how we can start that money conversation, so we can take out the informality of it and bring it into a place where this feels good. Because that's what we want to create. We want to create the momentum and have great conversations. Now, speaking of that, we're going to do our first group activity of the day. Now, those of you in the room, you're going to talk at the table. Those of you who are on Zoom, you're going to go to a Zoom room. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We want you to identify the challenges that justice impacted individuals are facing. So I want you guys to put your heads together and think about what are those challenges, and let's bring them to the forefront. Okay, so Abby's gonna get you all broken out in there and Zoom. Those of you in the room, go ahead, talk to your tables, let's consolidate a little bit. And let's get a great list of these challenges that justice impacted individuals are facing.
And make sure every group picks someone to report out.
Yes.
And so even our Zoom rooms, we'll have somebody unmute and report out from your group. So we'll be breaking out into 5 groups of 4 to 5 people. And we'll see you, how many minutes?
Just take 5.
5 minutes, okay.
Thank you.
I have somebody answer.
All right, that'll be me. Group 1, let's see, we talked about a general feeling of being overwhelmed by choices and decisions when all your decisions have been made for you. LFOs and debt in general, fear and mistrust of financial institutions and institutions in general. Depending on convictions, they can be not allowed to use email or the internet, which is a pretty huge barrier. Past evictions or other issues on credit reports affecting being able to be housed, even if they have housing assistance. Stigma, which affects confidence, which is really important in being able to do, overcome all these hurdles. You need confidence to be able to do that, and stigma really negatively affects that. Less access to traditional employment, leading to potentially being taken advantage of by working under the table or other type of things like that. That's what our group came up with.
That's great, group 1. Thank you so much. Thank you. Awesome list.
All right, group 2, who's the report out for group 2?
I'm not sure if mine was group 2. I didn't pay attention. It was Donna and Regina and I'm just gonna, we just talked about the challenges that are impacted our employment, housing, health and safety risks, systemic like poverty, trauma, substance abuse that could happen in the home, affecting the entire family. I talked about having trust issues, Reentering into society is very hard. What was the other things that we talked about? Employment barriers are huge and significant, just like we talked about earlier. And yeah, that was what we came up with.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was
All
just going to add, sorry, for the same group, we also talked about resources available to support justice impacted individuals. And I think a couple of us mentioned Goodwill Industry. So they offer like tailored job training, placement programs that are designed for those individuals.
Great. All right, thanks for sharing. Next group, well, I'll say your names so if you maybe didn't see your group number. So Andrew M, Floor, Lindsay, Fawn, do you guys have someone to report out?
Hi, this is Fawn. We talk about credit challenges and I use the word challenges, but I guess somewhat the barriers that we see in teens and teens who have been incarcerated and coming back into society, and then immigrants and refugees who are trying to establish credit. What does that mean? So that's what our group discussed. Andrew, Flor, anybody else want to step in and share?
All right, thank you. Group 3 is Mahogany's group. Does anyone, who's the share out for Mahogany's group?
This is Lily, and our group talked about the cost of being in prison, which someone in our group was researching because that was a point made earlier in the chat. And someone in our group saw that in 2019, the cost was anywhere from $20 to $80 per day in Washington State, depending on the sentence. And then we talked about not only potential pre-existing debt, but cost of incarceration, court fees, debt, also lack of credit and the ability to build credit. We also talked about.
Great, thank you. All right, and our last group is Olivia's group.
Hi. So we actually didn't bring much up that hasn't already been discussed. Something that was unique in my group is there hasn't been a lot of experience in working with incarcerated individuals. It's something that is newer to both of us, or to all of us. And but we did talk about the challenges and barriers and just like navigating all the different systems and getting out. There's like always hoops to jump through, and with lack of maybe like experience, if it's, you know, there's going to be challenges with that and doing it for the first time, like anxiety or like a hesitancy on how to start, how to open a bank account, if there's any mistrust, how to build credit, how to use a credit card appropriately, and then potentially lack of support and resources in terms of it could be like monetary support and resources, but it could also be emotional when it comes to like family or friends or anyone that they can rely on. And those are, I think, the main things that we talked about. Teresa, or if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in.
Okay, thank you. Thank everyone on Zoom for all your group discussions. Thank you so much. We have a hand up in the room. Kristen.
Um,
I'm paying attention.
Obviously, a lot of the conversations revolve around trust, both from the person who's being released and from the community members that they're working with. I'm just wondering, in anything in here, is there specific guidelines or steps that can help us as coaches in our organizations have those conversations about what does building trust look like?
Did you want to comment on that, Shannon? Thank you.
Yeah, that question. And really, it's meeting your client where they're at. It's finding out what they want to work on and helping them to build some confidence along the way. And we talked about that earlier as well. And some of it really is finding those local resources that you already know that are, for example, getting a bank account. There may be a local credit union that already works with justice impacted people. And it's much easier and better if you can bring that person to that place as opposed to, going into one of the larger brick and mortar banks that may or may not have the best process necessarily for that. So, finding those local resources where they're already part of the community, it helps to build that kind of step by step. So that's kind of two-pronged approach there.
All right, anybody else want to comment on that? On building that trust? Our clicker stopped working.
We have Abby in the chat or in Zoom would like to comment. Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when I've been working with folks who've been incarcerated, I think it's so important to help them build up confidence. And I like to tell them, you can do this. You've already figured out an entire financial system that's complicated and nuanced, and I wouldn't understand it at all. However, there's a whole financial system in incarceration that people there have figured out. And so I like to tell them, you figured that out, you're going to be able to figure this out too. You're going to do great. It's just a different system and you're going to be able to figure it out just fine.
Awesome, thank you, that was great comment, thank you everyone for that, thank you so much. All right, we're gonna transition here, and we had a little technical difficulty with our clicker, but I think we can go to the next slide. And we'll have Richard come back up and lead us through this session. Great.
Thanks, Ed. How are you doing? Thank you, folks who are joining us online for just really insightful and thoughtful comments. This is a special population that we are dealing with when we talk about working with folks who are incarcerated. So thank you all. And you don't need a lot of experience. And that comes with time because the folks that are getting out of prison have many of the same multiple barriers to self-sufficiency that you deal with every day. It's just a little more complicated when they have a felony condition to deal with. A little anecdote, I want to tell you about my knuckleheaded nephew. And everybody's got at least one knuckleheaded nephew. You don't have to raise your hand. But this knucklehead decided that he was going to rob a check cashing place at gunpoint. Problem was he didn't have a gun. So he spray painted a toy gun to look like a real gun with an orange tip and went into a Title Max and robbed it at gunpoint. That way clean. No chance of catching him. They had no idea who he was because A, he lived in the suburbs and went to the city. B, had role models, had parents, everything you could imagine. So the police were even looking for them. He did, however, tell his expecting girlfriend when he gave her the proceeds from the robbery to cover the cost of a child that was on the way. She said, well, where did you get the money? And he told her that he was the Title Max robber. And then maybe a month or two later, he told her he was seeing someone else. So she called it some reward money. So that's my knucklehead nephew. And it is relevant to this because I helped him prepare for his money situation, both before, during, and not quite after incarceration, but you have to prepare for your money situation before, during, and after incarceration. And I call this the get your money right slide. So you all know who do your work in the space, you love that song, Get Your Money Right. So it's all about getting your money right. So what I did with my knucklehead nephew is I said, first of all, let's use this tool. And we're gonna just have a checklist and we're gonna prioritize what it is we need to focus on financially, given your limited means while it is you're incarcerated. So let's go back to the number one issue, and that for him happened to be child support. He had already had another kid, that he was paying child support for, and one on the way. And it put a lot of financial pressures on him, and that's why he thought he had to go out and do what he did, which makes no sense, but it is what it is. So that was his major issue that we identified. And we said, well, what can we do to address this issue? Because you're gonna be doing a significant amount of time in prison. In Virginia, it didn't matter if it was a real gun or it was a fake gun. It's a gun. So he's doing a significant amount of time. So we identified that he really wanted to focus on child support and staying connected with his daughter while he was indeed behind bars. Some of the actions that we could take is that any money that he was able to make while working in prison, he wanted to have that money go towards child support. One of the main things we did is we contacted the Office of Child Support Enforcement and informed them that he would indeed be incarcerated for the next 5 to 10 years, real specific. And so they would not be able to garnish his wages. But one of the #1 issues that men behind bars have is that they are accumulating arrearages while they are behind bars. So child support, very big issue. The other thing that you can work on with folks is that utilize the resources that are out there. There are a lot of resources, websites, additional resources that involve student loan debt. How it is that you can work with folks to get a deferment if they happen to have student loan debts. They're going to maybe local community colleges like this one. So there are deferment programs that are out there. Devin mentioned, and you all did earlier today, talking about the issue of identity theft. That's a real big deal. And so identity theft does happen to folks who are indeed behind bars, so that's important too. And then the thing I really wanted to mention is that so many people who are getting out of prison are unbanked. They simply don't, and somebody mentioned trust. I'm glad that issue came up. There's a level of distrust among this population of anything that's official or any systems whatsoever. They would rather work under the table in many regards than to have a legit job and pay taxes. So we have to get around this distrust that they have, and this is a largely unbanked and or underbanked population. So it's a special population that we have to deal with. And I already mentioned child support arrearages. So some folks would prefer to work under the table so that they're, that's what we say, under the table. I don't know, we all say out here, so that their income is fully taxed and garnished in many regards. So that's a lot of what's going on. Devin, do you have the clicker or do I have the clicker?
Clicker doesn't work, Ryan is the clicker.
Okay, one more. We'll move on. So that's getting your money right in that regard. And the second thing that folks really need to think carefully about is documentation. Most folks who are nearing release, do you all have good working relationships with your DOL, your Department of Licensure? Or is there a State Department here in Washington State? I'm not sure quite how it works.
Where did Karen go?
Department of Licensing?
Yes.
Yes.
They're good friends, but my microphone vanished.
It's good to have strategic partnerships with those agencies, and they are usually willing to come into the prison and work with folks who are nearing release to make sure that they get a few things. One, it always surprised me the number of people who never saw a copy of their birth certificate and had no idea where it is. Now, I remember I graduated from college and I had to go find mine. It was back in Pennsylvania somewhere, and I was able to dig it up. But a lot of folks have to understand that if you're going to apply for jobs or apply for benefits and you're a veteran and so forth, then you simply have to have the required identity documents. So you have to work very carefully with these folks to identify what documents that they need in order that they can gain gainful employment. And among those documents are a certified copy of the birth certificate. It always surprises me the number of people who don't have a state ID or driver's license. You don't want to go to apply for a job with your prison ID, by the way. That's never a good look. So we want them to be able to work with the Department of Licensure or DMV or motor vehicles, whatever you call it here, to, make sure that they can get the driver's license. And in addition, a lot of people simply have been away so long that they just don't know where their social security card could possibly be. They might remember the number, but don't have any idea where it could possibly be. So we have to work very carefully with this population to get access to a lot of this key documentation that they'll need in order to overcome some of the barriers to success. So we have to work with our folks to get their paperwork in order, get things right. And there's one other thing here I can't see. Oh, your rap sheet. And this is a toughie. And first of all, if anybody's ever seen a rap sheet, and that's your record of arrest and prosecution sheet, A, they're never accurate. B, they're very complicated. So C, I would highly recommend that if folks do want a copy of their rap sheet, that they work with legal aid. For some folks who do this work regularly, because even if you had it, you probably wouldn't understand it. And a lot of times there is incomplete and missing information that's there. No offense to prosecutors in the room, but sometimes they will include multiple charges or charges that never actually made it to court. So that's something else that folks might want to gain access to. But you have to get your documents over. So not only do you get your money right, but in addition, you have to get your paperwork right, and you work with those groups to do that. So this is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But I wanted to quickly inquire from our colleague at the Attorney General's office about the state of Washington and about ban the box. And ban the box in many states, I believe Washington signed it in law in or about 2018. And it required employers not to ask about your criminal background during the interview process, or excuse me, during the application process, but in most places they can ask during the interview process, but I'm not quite sure how it works in Washington, so I'll defer to our colleague.
Hello, I wasn't expecting to present today, but I do stuff on the fly. I'm a fly by the seat of my pants coming down. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Elena Lisa with the Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division. What we're going to talk about right now is something that is being spearheaded by our Civil Rights Unit, or actually I should say Civil Rights Division. And they are, there it is. Thank you, Ryan, so much. I'm gonna grab my phone. So this is our Fair Chance Act, and for those of you who may not be familiar with this, it was enacted in 2018. And so basically, if you take a look at the law, the RCW is up there at 49.94. Those of you who want to look it up, I always look up the laws. But it is to protect job applicants that want to compete for a job. So it addresses job advertisements. A company may not advertise job openings in a way that excludes people with criminal records from applying. So ads that state no felons or no criminal backgrounds or otherwise communicate these similar messages are prohibited. There are penalties for people who do violate this. In the applications, covered employees may not include any questions on a job application that seeks information about the applicant's criminal record. And then the hiring process, the covered employees may not do any of the following until after the employer initially determines that the applicant is otherwise qualified for the position. So they cannot inquire verbally or in writing about an applicant's criminal record. They cannot receive information through a criminal history background check, otherwise obtain information about the applicant's criminal record, or implement policies or practices that would automatically or categorically exclude job applicants with a criminal record, including rejecting applicants for a failure to disclose a criminal record. And so who is covered under this? Well, this includes public agencies, private individuals, businesses, corporations, contractors, temporary staffing agencies, training, apprenticeship programs, and job placement, referral, and employment agencies. The law applies to all employers regardless of the number of workers that they employ. Now, it doesn't it does not apply to employers that are hiring someone who will or may have unsupervised access to children, vulnerable adults, vulnerable persons, law enforcement or criminal justice agencies, financial institutions, which Danny, you mentioned that earlier, national or registered security entities, other employers who are permitted or required by law to ask about and consider information about an applicant's criminal record for employment purposes, or employers seeking non-employee volunteers. Now, if someone does encounter this type of violation of this law, of the Fair Chance Act that, again, was enacted in 2018, you may file a complaint with our office in our Civil Rights Division. Scroll back down to the bottom. Fair Chance Jobs at atg.wa.gov, or call our toll-free 1-800 number, so it's 833-660, thank you, Ryan, 660-4877. Now, I will say, hold on, I'm trying to bring something else up, one moment. And my phone is frozen, oh, there we go. Okay, so, oh, I thought you were whispering to me. So let me see. So I mentioned the exceptions. So an entity is required to comply with the rules and regulations. And then, oh, so the repercussions, I did want to mention that for the violation of the law. So the Washington State Attorney General's office will utilize a stepped enforcement approach using education. Obviously, our Civil Rights Division will occasionally go out and do presentations on rights. And we have a lot of laws that affect people in the workplace. Warnings, legal, administrative action, and then the penalties can be up to $1,000 per violation, and I did mention that earlier. So if you have any questions, please write to fairchancejobs@atg.wa.gov or call the toll-free line at 800-660-4877. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to share that resource with you, because in many states that I go to, folks on the front lines of self-sufficiency and financial empowerment aren't aware that their states have passed recent laws, relatively recent laws, that ban the box is what we call it in Washington. There's different names in different states, and it's good to see that your legislation has been progressive, thinking forward, and reducing some of the barriers to self-sufficiency. Devin, I think we're gonna go to break. Is there anything you want to say before we go to break? We're gonna have a 15 minute break.
It works now.
Yeah. We're gonna have a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll continue on our regular session. Thank you all. There's a little recess.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Give us some time. Okay. There he is, all right. Okay, so the magic clicker is not working again.
It took a 15.
I know how to fix it now.
Okay, great. All right.
Did the recording take?
All right, everyone, welcome back. And we can just advance this slide one over while you do that, that'd be great. Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna talk about one of the tools here to tracking income and benefits. And so the way we want to do this is we want to take a look at a few things. Now, I want to say this. For those of you who have not yet worked with people that are justice impacted, here's the thing. We're not asking you to have a new conversation. What we're saying is that the conversation that you're already having around their issues, then you want to bring these topics into the conversation. So we want to make it seamless. Now, one of the first things we want to talk about, obviously, is income and understanding what that means for them, whether it's going to be regular, irregular, seasonal, one-time occurrences, all of that. All of the above counts. In addition to that, someone mentioned earlier about the benefits that people have, and we want to make sure that we got local, state, tribal, or even government benefits that they may be eligible for. So the tool actually encompasses spaces for all of that to be accounted for. And so now, when we talk about income, we want to also talk about anything that they receive part-time, full-time, including in prison or jail, or self-employment and investments. Now, I know that, our state is pretty big now on entrepreneurship. We've got lots of momentum going to help people to begin to start their businesses. And so that is very attractive for people who may not be able to get a job right away. Maybe the self-employment aspect is what they do, and that's totally fine. The point here is all of that can be tracked on the actual income and benefits tracker. Now, the thing about it, also, we say this all the time when it comes to tracking this information, you also want to track benefits as well. Because if they're getting SNAP benefits or any other benefit that could actually offset some of the costs that they may have out of their pocket, then that's countable. So we want to put that on the form as well. So here's what that looks like. And by the way, again, I just want to reiterate the link that was put in the chat. Some of you may have joined Zoom after the link, so I'm gonna ask Abby to post the link one more time in the chat so that all of you can get this. This particular tool is called Income and Benefits Tracker. Now, for those of you who also have been working with the big financial accounting toolkit, you know this tool is also there in that one. So, but I want to make sure that we understand that this is really a great tool to help us to break these things down. Now, again, these tools, when you get them online, they are fillable, so you can just type directly into them. So that might be a benefit for a lot of people. Now, I want you to take note of one particular aspect of this. It goes by week. And you all know, when people are counting their money, they're counting it when it comes in. Sometimes doing it on a monthly basis is not detailed enough. So this tool breaks it down by week. Now, I want to say there are 5 weeks in here for those months that obviously have 5 weeks. But the important thing here is to make sure that we're accounting for whenever the money does come in. Now we have job, child support, disability, SNAP, TANF, other government programs, and then there's a space for other. But what's great about this, it gives the instructions here. And again, for those of you who, again, are not as familiar with this, you don't have to be a financial expert to do this. You can just simply follow the directions right in the toolkit. And that's what's great about the companion guide. The companion guide gives lots of description and lots of step-by-step instructions on every tool that's there, so that it makes it very user-friendly. Now, how many of you are okay with having people tracked by net income versus gross income? Let's have a discussion about that for a minute. Because on the form here, now notice it talks about net income. It talks about what people actually get in their pocket. Now, I understand that a lot of people do like to count from the gross, and it sounds better sometimes, or I may, right? But the point is that we want to make sure that people are tracking actually what they get. So what are your thoughts on that? I just want to hear from the room and those on Zoom. What are your thoughts about focusing in on the net income, the money that they actually get in their hand? A lot of head nods here, and I said we're all good with that. What about on Zoom, Abby?
We have Abby M who said that she does usually do net income.
Yes, awesome, thank you. Great. Now, also, I want to say this. We know that people do things to earn money, and notice the other category at the bottom of the form here. And so what if a person goes out and they do some yard work, or they do something else to earn money? Now, I'm gonna ask you coaches in the room, are you asking them to count that, or are you letting them use that as this cushion money? What are we doing with that? Are we counting every dollar that comes in the budget? Anybody? Okay, we got a couple no's in the room, let's hear about it. We gotta pass the mic around, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I would say yes.
You would say you were happy with.
I would, yeah.
Alright, I personally wouldn't, and the college students I work with, just because that money isn't a guarantee. So like, say for seasonal work, right now,
Yeah.
you're not like picking apples right now during the season. Or if like, say, it's the aspect of it not being a guaranteed amount of money is kind of what intimidates my students from like putting it on there.
Yeah.
And then I just realized a lot of the times I work off of gross income, especially for students who are on like TANF or SNAP, because they know that number, like,
Yeah,
they pull it out like this. So I might use this like worksheet, have like two versions of it, just because like, say when I had a student whose car broke down, the TANF money actually counted against her when she was trying to get her auto loan. Yeah, so if I would have like been hammering with her about net income when she applied for that auto loan, she would have been like, what? Why am I not getting approved? So it's just like another thing that I try and consider, especially with students that I know are on TANF and kind of like moving different pots of money.
wow, thank you, that's a great point that you made, thank you so much for that, Dr. There was a couple other thoughts here in the room as well. Yeah, ditto, so yeah, thank you. Yeah,
And we had in the chat, Abby M said, I count everything to get a full picture, but it's not being used to determine eligibility of anything, it's just for examining cash flow. Pippa said, I suggest people count it unless it's very rarely part of their income. And then Jennifer had a great point, would you like?
Oh, I was just saying, I like your point about funds that aren't guaranteed and how you may not want to count on those. And another example is receiving child support. Not always guaranteed, and so might not want to build your budget around that, but helpful to know for planning, but careful.
yeah, totally, yeah. Now, I wanna say this, there are scenarios where, you know, we talk about this whole aspect of getting through the month. Okay, we talk about that. So what happens if the person is able to get some extra resources or benefits from somewhere, and if they're really counting all things for that particular month, then maybe we do a sheet just for that month and not carry it into the future to the points that were made here earlier. But I just want to emphasize that the flexibility and the customization of how these tools are applied, totally up to you. Totally up to you. Now, I want to reiterate what we said yesterday at the end of the day when someone was asking about the tools and what can we do with them, because even though they're created by the CFPB, well, you heard Joe say yesterday that you can use these tools however your agency desires. If you change the tool, you just remove any logos of the CFPB that might be present. Once you do that, then it's all good. Do whatever you want to do with it. Customize it however you want. Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate that. Some of you who weren't here yesterday did not hear that, but again, these tools are totally customizable without the CFPB logo. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. All right, so that is the income and benefits tracker. Now, of course, we're gonna meet people who haven't really got a paycheck in a while, and so this is just for that purpose. So if you have to explain to someone, or maybe it's someone who's just getting a job for the first time, an immigrant here in the United States, or maybe it's a young person getting their first real job. The point here is, it gives an opportunity of how to read a pay stub. Now, what about this whole thing around paying bills? This topic obviously is in both toolkits, the big one and this companion guide. This spending tracker keeps the same format as the income and benefits tracker. It's doing everything by the week. Now, I want to also say here that notice here on the left-hand side of the spending tracker, there have these different categories. Now, I want to say this, there's no particular reason why these categories are there versus categories that might not be listed. The point here is these are just generic categories and they're listed in alphabetical order. There was no hierarchy intended when these were created. But what we want to be able to do is make sure that every category that the person is going to be spending on is accounted for in the weekly tracking. So that's what this is all about. So again, I will reiterate this one point that when this is done online, the bottom right corner, it will tabulate the total amount of all of the week's entries right on the form. So even though it's a PDF, it's going to do that. It's built into the logic in the document. Now, debt, okay, dealing with debt. So obviously, this is money that people owe. We talked about legal financial obligations earlier and all these other court fees and fines and things that may be relevant for them. But here's the thing about it. We want to be able to make sure that we can get an idea of how much debt is involved. You all know that when we're talking about doing certain things or applying for any type of financial service, they're taking applications, they're asking people to list their expenses, they're taking their social security number, gonna run a credit report, they're gonna get the debt. The point here is, how do we know how to track it? So we wanna say this, that debt obviously is anything that they owe, it's a liability, and it does obligate future income. And I think that that is something I wanna emphasize. Someone said earlier, we talked about how do we really connect the values to what we're doing here, and how do we create that trust? Well, here's one thing I want you to consider, and this is for everybody. It doesn't matter if people are coming out of incarceration, this is for anybody. I just think this is a very important point. All debt obligates future income. All debt. So maybe coaches, those of you who work with clients directly, maybe an emphasis can be placed on looking at, if a person knows that, well, hey, in 6 months, I'm not gonna have this income, or in 9 months, my situation is gonna change, I have to move. There are things that we can consider when we're talking about taking on debt willfully. If we just go the extra step and we think about, well, how is this going to impact my future income? What does it mean? How's it gonna work? And how will I navigate that? So I just wanted to just emphasize that point, that that is something that you can certainly bring up in your conversations. Now, how is debt different than credit? Well, credit is the ability to borrow money, and debt is the result of using credit. Now, I remember being in a session where we talked about a person can have credit but not debt. Okay, that's a very interesting concept, but here's the thing. A lot of the credit builder products are designed just like that, because, for example, you can do the one where people are putting an amount in every single month. It's a savings account. They're actually building up the balance as they go, but also they're reporting it as if it were a loan payment, and then it builds up the credit. So a person can have credit without going into debt. It's a really interesting concept, but it's totally doable. But the point here is, we just want to differentiate the two. Now, with that being said, here's this whole thing. I want you guys to think about what's good debt versus what is bad debt. Is there anything on this list here that you would consider a bad debt for anybody? Any one on this list? Okay, someone in the room said pawn shop. As what, good or bad? Okay? He says bad. But for a person who has no other money, they don't have income coming in, they wanna eat tonight, and they got a tool, a set of tools in the garage, maybe they need to go find that tool, right, and buy groceries tonight, right? Yes, Abby.
The chat says totally depends.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
another, it doesn't matter whether I think it's good or bad, not my debt, it's about the client.
Yes, thank you. Yes, kudos, whoever said that, that's awesome. Yes, it's about the client, right. Now, here's the thing, the context here is for each individual. The individual has to determine, just like we were hearing about the auto loan situation. We talked about that yesterday, where there's some very unaffordable automobile loans that people are taking on that they may not be able to pay consistently over time. They may be able to do it once or twice, after that, things might get a little difficult. So the point is, the good or debt, bad debt conversation is contextualized to the individual. That's right. All right, now, here is the actual reentry debt law. Now, notice here, this is where different deviates a little bit from the one that's in the financial crime toolkit, the big one, your money, your goals. Now, notice here, on the right-hand side, it lists, consider the consequences of not paying each type of debt, reincarceration, repossession, loss of driver's license, loss of housing. Very important to include in the conversation when we're talking about listing the debt. And again, notice the top, we have these icons that represent different types of debt. We certainly have justice system debt right on here, payday loans, student loans, friends and family. Also is trackable on this particular form. So just wanted to say that we want to make sure that we're helping people to totally track every debt that they have on this form. So, all right. So I just wanted to share that with you. And the final thing is we have this whole thing about strategies to lower debt. Now, this particular tool is obviously going to create some great conversation because this is talking about a couple of things. Debt prioritization, how do we determine which debt should be paid first? And or what about debts that we can't really pay right now and we need to maybe negotiate a few things? Okay, negotiate a payment plan or a reduction of the debt. So that's where these conversations come in. The idea here is to get people thinking about what would be their strategy. The strategy that's most appropriate for them. And so notice here the dynamic aspect of these tools. Again, contextualizing them to each individual. We're also helping raise awareness on these different options that they have. Are there any questions from anyone in the room or in the Zoom around these particular tools around income and benefit tracking, spending tracking, and logging your debt? All right. Oh, yeah.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I just kind of had an aha moment. That, prioritizing like student loan repayment. So like the Biden administration didn't like push through the loan forgiveness. And he has like a person with significant-ish amount of student loans, but now it's like, I think it's in March, like you have to start making payments again. So for a lot of like students that have had that experience of like, okay, well, the last three or four, when did COVID start? I mean,
Sometime in the recent
Yeah.
past.
Yeah, like maybe like 5 years, going on 4 to 5 years of where they haven't had to make payments. And now this like reality check that in March, like this is gonna be a big burden added back onto their plate. And yeah, as a person who works here in Highline, figuring out like just from a college's perspective, like how we're gonna have these conversations that we might not have been having like since like 5 years ago. Yeah, so just that aha moment that like even with the prioritization of debt, like that this might just like throw off a lot of people's financial situation.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, we got another one. Abby, yes.
So in the chat, Abby M said, I just think it's great that they have the consequences included on the tool because this is the type of information I don't know about, but it is so important for the individual to know.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. And it just creates for a deeper conversation and people can make different decisions based on their awareness around these issues. So thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Okay, any other comments or questions on these particular tools?
I just had a reflection on all of these, as you're using them, depending on your organization's printing budget, I would print off a fresh one of these for each conversation. And then revisit progress, and then these don't have to be the be all end all of the budget tool that you have to use throughout your entire planning process. As Abby mentioned in the chat, it is a a lot easier to start from a place that has a lot of this information and then go into tools that fit your client's situation a little bit better.
Yeah, you make a great point, Ryan, and I will say this as well. I think my mic just went out. Yeah, the mic just went out, battery went out. Yeah, I got it. I'm trying to really see it. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so I just want to make one more point based on Ryan's comment, and that is, Ryan mentioned actually printing these for every time you meet with someone or every client. What I'm gonna also say is you can save it. It's a PDF. So if you need to make multiple copies, just name it something else, right? And give it like January, February, March, etc. And then have multiple of these available for them to look at various different options. So yes, I just wanted to say that that could be an answer for, like you said, if people can't print for whatever reason, they can certainly save it to their computers. Yes, good, thank you. Awesome. I know we had another comment, Shana.
Yes, one quick comment too. Many people, when they're releasing either from prison or jail, really don't ever want to look at the paperwork they've received on the way out ever again, understandably so. However, one opportunity you have as their coach is to have a conversation, have them bring that in and talk with you about it and go through it with them if they're comfortable doing so, because it will have what activities may result in reincarceration. So that's a critical piece that, again, people want to stick that in a drawer far, far away and never think. This is an opportunity for you to use that as a building block for how to help them stay out of those circumstances.
Great point. Okay, then back over to Rich.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, notice all the text and it's always in kind of I like it that way. Well, we're gonna chat briefly about understanding background screening reports. And that's why I really wanted to appreciate the input from our Washington AG's office about the Fair Chance Act. And I would encourage each of you all to visit that website because it is rich. And it really is tailored for each state. This presentation is more general. It gives you some tips and tools that you can use in working with this vulnerable population. But that website tells you what exactly the law is in Washington and what employers must do.
And very quickly, I just wanted to say, that flyer that's on there is available in English and Spanish.
It is a tremendous website and Washington is ahead of a lot of other places that I did look at these issues across the country. But there are some tips and tools that I think CFPB wants to share with you all that work with this population. And the first thing is that let your clients know to just labor under the assumption that everybody will be conducting some form of a background screening report. And that's a very broad area, which I'll talk about later. But just assume that it's going to happen. When you're applying for a job, whether it happens during the initial screening process or at the interview process, sooner or later, we're gonna have to talk about that criminal history and that background. So labor under the assumption that it's going to happen. The second thing, and why you want to visit that website, is because there are indeed special rules that apply for employers when they're looking at folks who have criminal history. And that website will tell you more about what's happening in Washington. Because folks should really know their rights as folks who are out there and they know what avenues that they can pursue to get some of these things cleared up in the record. One of the major issues that we have right now is technology. Technology is moving faster than anybody can keep up with. So you have multiple databases with a lot of different information. So it's important that you know your rights. So these reports, what is a background screening report? They're everywhere. It's not just your criminal history, it's your credit history, your criminal record, other public records of marriage, divorce, residencies, and things like that, and information about your employment and rental history and beyond, I like to say. So it's a whole gamut in an area where folks have more access to your personally identifiable information and personal information than you can imagine these days. So there's a lot of information out there, a lot of different places, and you have to be familiar with that. What do you do if there's something that's not correct on your report. That's the real challenge. It's negative information. It can impact whether or not you get employed, whether or not you get an apartment, and so on and so forth. We talked about a lot of different things. So we don't want this to really impact your ability to get a job. So if there is something that is incorrect in those reports, and there very well could be, we encourage you to do a couple different things. And I'm just gonna cut to the chase in the interest of time and just say, legal aid, legal aid, legal aid. Have strategic partnerships with legal aid. Do y'all have expungement clinics that some of the law schools have going on here? And in addition, some other organizations that might help with this, because it's a more complicated process than most people realize. I mean, just reviewing your criminal history information and background, it's much more than that. So you really need to make sure that there are not mistakes in those records, and there are multiple records across multiple agencies and so forth. But there's a couple things I want to highlight that are really small on here, so all you can have to move closer. There's some common errors that might be in your background report. My name is Richard Lewis. It turns out there's a lot of Richard Lewises out there. I didn't think there were so many, but right in my town in Centerville, Virginia, there's at least 3 or 4 guys named Richard Lewis, some of which have some serious criminal histories. So sometimes they might very well have your name wrong. You can have, your social security information can be mixed up with someone else's, so there could be errors there. Addresses change all the time. Oh, by the way, incarcerated population has moved more than folks on TANF. Sometimes incarcerated people aren't on TANF, but these folks move a lot. So they're constantly changing addresses. So that's, something that I'm sure you all see every day in your report. If there is information that you believe should be expunged from your record, one person shared with me that their brother had a juvenile conviction that bled over into his adult records, and now it's causing problems with him getting employment as an adult. Juvenile records are to be expunged, but oftentimes, because of multiple databases and everything I talked about, your history as a juvenile more than often will show up in a lot of these background reports. So that's a very common issue where juvenile records are neither expunged or sealed, and it's tracking you for really the rest of your life. Records can very well be incomplete. Prosecutors' offices have charges. Remember, this is a rap sheet, so it's a record of your arrest and your prosecution record. Oftentimes, prosecutors overcharge, and so you might be charged with 6 different things, but end up leading down to maybe 1 or 2 of them. But the other things that were actually dropped still remain on your record. So it's important to make sure that those records are not incomplete, and they don't list single charges multiple times. So not only do you have charges that were dropped, but you can also have single charges listed multiple times or multiple counts. So it gets awfully complicated, and that's really why you need legal aid to assist. So I talked about the record not being expunged. Then we got the federal versus state issue, which is a whole other layer of complexity. So at the end of the day, your record may very well include some negative information, just like the credit report, same as your criminal record. You have to work with legal aid. It's a long process. It's a painful process, but that's the way to make sure that some of these things can actually be corrected over time. I did want to talk a little bit about how do you go about getting some of these records? Legal aid, I would do it, but there's multiple places, as I mentioned, sometimes the police department, usually not very helpful to help you get those criminal records. There's some state criminal records authorities that vary from state to state. Might try the AG's office is a good place to start. Your state and county courts, they have tons of records, but they're not really big on sharing either. So there's multiple sources. So I would recommend that you work with legal aid and expungement clinics, because they do this all the time. So they're very familiar with the process, which does indeed vary from state to state. And I mentioned that. So now comes the fun part. None of this is really relevant unless we can, bring it home and think about some folks that are in your case files. So we're going to have folks get into a group. Is that how it's going to work then? Get into a working group. We might have 1 or 2, or we could just have 1 in this room and speak out loud. But for you all who are on the phone, We're gonna break off in the groups, I believe, and we're gonna talk about two scenarios. Let me know if you have some further instruction.
Yeah, so we'll do breakout rooms again on Zoom, and so how much time do we wanna give them for this one?
Let's do 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. And so after you give instructions, I will put you all in breakout rooms. I also will put in pictures of the two role play scenarios in the chat. So if you want to open those on your computer, you can have those for reference in your breakout rooms, or if you want to take a picture or your own screenshot of them as they're up on the screen here, make sure you do that so you have the information when you go into the breakout rooms. And so, Rich, if you want to explain more, and then let me know when to put them in.
Thank you. Let's talk about Sarah, because Sarah, I think, is typical of someone who may very well be in Eastwood. She is a recent person in custody, so she was recently released from a women's facility right here in Washington. And her real goal is, how am I gonna go about finding stable housing? Does that sound familiar? Does it resonate? Good. Now, right now, Sarah is staying with Big Mama. Now, I noticed that all communities seem to have a Big Mama. It's usually grandma or mom's side of the family. When folks get out of prison, they go to their grandparents' home. A lot of reasons why, but it usually works out pretty good. So right now, Sarah's staying with Big Mama. And in addition to getting stable housing, she really wants to reconnect with her young daughter. Because she has a young daughter, she's struggling to make that connection after being away from her daughter for about 5 years or so. She wants to be able to balance her work and her life. And eventually, her real goal is to get custody of her daughter, whether shared custody or the full custody, because right now, her daughter is in the custody of the father's parents. So that's Sarah, a little bit about her story. So first thing she wants to do, she really wants to get established in employment. But she has a couple of challenges, because when she does get a daughter, she knows that if she gets that new job, she's probably gonna have to work midnight shift, maybe 11 to 7, and it's hard to find childcare at 11 to 7. How do you find quality, affordable childcare at 11 to 7 at night? Does this resonate with you all's case law sometimes? And in addition, she has some transportation challenges too. Provided she does find work, how's Sarah gonna be able to get to work? Because in her community, there's not a lot of jobs there. And most have moved up Amazon warehouses and things like that, have moved sort of out to the burbs. So she got to catch 3 different buses that don't really run at 11 o'clock at night when she needs to start her shift. So she has a lot of challenges going on. And if that wasn't enough, let's just make it a little more fun. In addition, Sarah, like my upland nephew, sort of has to have her read. Now, I understand that Washington passed some marijuana laws recently, and how's it work here in Washington? Pretty much anything goes to dispensaries, I know it's all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's legal, semi-legal, sort of
It's
legal.
legal.
Technically, it's on your place of residency, but not in place of employment or in public places.
Okay, well, Sarah has to have her weed because it helps her with their anxiety. And in addition, there might be a minor learning and or developmental disability that goes into it. So take the next 5 minutes or so and use some of the tools that we talked about to try and come up with an action plan for Sarah.
On your marks, get set, go. Folks in the room, join up for a single conversation. Folks online, I will mute the single conversation, let everybody jump in and break our rooms.
back on. Can everyone on Zoom hear us? Give us a thumbs up and in the chat. Awesome. All right, Rich, back to you.
Okay, thank you all. I hope that was a rich discussion, and I know it was here in the room. But we're gonna hear from the folks who are on Zoom. Just give us maybe your 11 and top 3 recommendations you would make for working with Sarah to move her towards self-sufficiency, to move her towards financial empowerment. Folks on the phone?
Is there a group that volunteers to share on Zoom?
I can just go. I'm group 5. There was just 2 of us. So pretty much, we kind of just went back and forth a little bit of kind of about what we both do, in our, agencies. And one of the, of course, Abby, one of the, big things that, I kind of noticed right away from the scenario is one of my main things I do is employment. So I'm an employment specialist. And so, all of the rest of this, stuff that's going on, like the, needing help with childcare, the transportation, all of the rest of that, I would probably firsthand, like, kind of try to connect them to the most appropriate, resources. And where we would probably like I would start with them would be the employment aspect, because that's where, that's my main job, and kind of build from there a little bit. We can also offer help with like transportation, meaning like giving bus passes and stuff like that. So that would be something else that I would offer. Um, yeah. So that's kind of just the summing up kind of what I would probably do in this scenario.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our folks in the room, any comments on your plan for Sarah?
Yes. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, we try to touch a little bit of everything. We're not experts, but we try to help. Let's see here. Oh, because I know you said that she may have some learning disabilities and stuff like that. So we're like, if it's documented, we could probably contact DSHS or the state for like some assistance, maybe some funding, some guidance, things of that nature to help her out on that aspect there, especially to maintain that work-life balance, and then hopefully to maybe help her regain some of that custody that she's looking for. Because I know that she, like you were saying, she likes to smoke the reefer a little bit, which is it's just fine. I don't mind it. But I know that Child Protective Services, and there's other organizations now that are starting to implement classes where you learn how to, what is it? Not really like take care of your child, but it's how to like communicate with them when it comes to like financial things, and then also be able to deal with like emotional and cognitive situations that may arise on their end and your end, so that way you're more stable and stuff and happier on all ends. So I think referring her to some of those programs would help out, especially with trying to regain custody and things. We also said for employment, sending her to the DVR, because they work close to, kind of helping them find jobs and resume work and all that kind of fun jazz. Also talking to her about maybe like, all right, options about maybe trying to work from home or closer to school for her child, to make it easier for her. Maybe look for some remote work, or looking for work with only a single bus line instead of having to take 3 or 4 to make it easier, because we know that transportation is tough. I know she mentioned bus passes when it comes to the transportation, and that's kind of what I like, the coupons, because I know organizations have those. I know other organizations such as Maple Vine Place also have like Uber and Lyft coupons. So that way, if they do need to go to work, they're like, yo, man, I got you for a whole week. Here you go, to call Lyft and you're set. That way you can get home safe, because kind of like you were saying, she gets off late at night.
That's great.
Oh, yeah, and then, yeah, the childcare stuff, like, let's say if they have other family members or friends that, let's say, work during the day, they can take care of the child during the evening to make it easier for her and kind of flip flop there, or work with her employer or the other parent to see if maybe they can work some kind of system out. But yeah, conversations and resources.
I like it. The message is that multiple barriers require multiple agencies and coordination. No one group could possibly address all of these issues. And these are real life issues that folks face every day when they're returning home. But one more quick scenario that we're going to do, and this is Paul, if you can move that along.
Did it die again?
Yeah, Paul, is a similar, situation, but he has his other challenges, because let's face it, every case file is a new experience. Paul is interested in resuming his career. His career was actually, working in a commercial HVAC space. He's done about 7 to 8 years in prison, and, he wants to get recertified, get his HVAC certification there. He has to pay a significant amount of, legal and financial obligations that are floating out there, including the resignation of paying child support, arrearages, which are about $40,000 for the period of time when he was behind bars. In addition, he needs some substance abuse and mental health counseling because Paul was and still has some challenges with a combination of meth, fentanyl, and or heroin. You choose what you think is. And on top of that, he was previously diagnosed with a serious mental illness. So what is it we can do for Paul and coming up with a plan of action for him? And to make it even more interesting, he is a level 1 or tier 1 section. What we
Yeah, exactly. Connection with,
All right, folks are coming back in from their breakout rooms. Welcome back, welcome back. It looks like everyone's here, so Rich, we'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you all, thank you. I know fall was a challenge, and, but the work we do is challenging. And that's the whole point. Any, feedback on our folks who are online regarding recommendations, utilizing Mr. Hall?
Yeah, can we have one group of our Zoom rooms volunteer to share out with us, please?
We can volunteer to share.
Thanks, Rocky.
Yeah, don't mind my 2-year-old in the back or my 1-year-old in the back. He might yell at me something. So we talked about how sometimes you can get your LFOs converted to community service hours, and those community service hours then can be worked in the community and to pay off some of the LFOs. And also it helps to get back in the mindset of working also. So if you're doing volunteer work, which is one of my first suggestions for people getting out, is just to go out and volunteer and get used to going to work or going to an activity so that they can start to get back in the swing of things is huge. And also gives you the chance to like feel like you're important to the community and just like feel like you belong in the community. So getting community service hours is definitely beneficial and volunteering for those community service hours. And sometimes you can even write those LFOs off using that volunteer service hours. And then another suggestion would be for substance abuse and mental health is just maybe enter into an Oxford house. Getting that stability from an Oxford house is huge because it just teaches you how to get back in the swing of things and getting on a routine and getting, you know what I'm saying, being accountable to being home at 10 o'clock or being up at 6 o'clock. It just gives you some stability for some of these people. So first, a person that's just getting out of prison. And child support can also be written off if they just call the child support agent and they can ask them for financial hardship and they can send them the paperwork to apply for for what they call a board hearing, and then they would be able to get some of that written off most likely. That's what we got.
Thank you very much. That was very thoughtful, very insightful, and thank you all for working with Sarah and for working with Paul to move them in the right direction that they need to go. Then I believe you are.
Whoever stands up, just call them.
One of the questions that I have, and forgive me if I'm ignorant, I am absorbing everything like a sponge. If you have a person that you're working with that has substance abuse and mental health issues, and in the state of Washington, you can't I want to say dual diagnosis, but you can't work on both at the same time. You can't be in treatment for substance abuse and mental health simultaneously. I think that if you're looking at the person as a whole and they've got substance abuse and mental health, they're not going to be able to focus on all those other things until they work on themselves first. But in the state of Washington, if you can't do both substance abuse and mental health at the same time, how would you start?
Yeah, I think oftentimes in most jurisdictions, when folks are released, whether it's jail or prison, there's normally a treatment plan upon release, particularly if they have pre-existing conditions, whether they need substance abuse or mental health. And so, first, again, ask the paperwork, to talk with them about what their priorities are. Again, empowering people as much as possible to make their own choices, even with these other co-occurring issues. But yeah, I think that's really kind of the trick. There's no one right answer, one size doesn't fit all. And really treating each individual as an individual. And, again, it would be a little weird for a financial counselor to be talking with and working on these issues, but you're part of their helping hands. And so, again, it takes a village. So wherever those opportunities are, if you can start a conversation, you're doing a huge service to that person and helping them gain the confidence to take your treatment to the next level. Whoever they trust, that's always my goal, is work with whoever you trust. All right, so I have jobs to do apparently, and could you advance my slide later today? Thank you. All righty, now we're going to talk about module 9, give you a brief overview of protecting one's money. And next slide, please. Okay. This has come up a lot today for very, very good reason, identity theft. Identity theft is probably the highest, we receive the number of highest complaints around identity theft from justice involved people. So it's the number one topic. I'll explain a little bit more on the process, for me to say, a little bit later, but so many have to do with identity theft. And there's a reason for that. People who go into prisons and jails, I said this to some of the small groups meeting this morning, people go into prison and jail, their family, their friends, their community members often know about that. And whether they have good intent or bad intent, often will take advantage of that opportunity and steal people's identity. This happens a lot with juveniles, working with kids who are in the system. Their parents know they have a clean record and they need to get an electric bill. So they might have the electric go under their child's name, their minor's name. And that's identity theft. Much more complicated when it's within your own family, so you're working with family dynamics as well. I'm not getting into the counseling part of that. But I think the identity theft, how to protect people, really, really critical. So here's what a person can do, whether they're justice impacted or not, to address the issue of identity theft or fraud. Getting copies of your clients' credit reports from all 3 credit bureaus, first step. If I had my brothers, people would do this when they enter prison and jail. So they'd be able to do it really early on and start addressing issues way back then. Oftentimes that doesn't happen until folks are released. And seeing what's on those credit reports. Some of them are very recognizable. But there may be things that aren't, or they forgot about, or something that, 10 years ago when they went in, they remember. Now, 10 years later, they don't, and it's gone to collections. So again, kind of helping somebody get familiarized with their credit report, or first time familiarized with their credit report. Going through it and looking to see if anything isn't recognizable, A, try to figure out what it was. And then B, if it does look like identity theft, then notifying the police, if you need to. If you know who did it, that's, like I said, where it can get really sticky and you might find yourself in an extra layer of counseling in your role as financial counselors, because oftentimes it is somebody that they know a lot that stole their identity or opened the credit line in their account, in their name. An identity thief may have used their name in a traffic stop or a encounter with police. Or we also see a lot of times where it's not identity theft, but the Richard Lewis #1, that was Richard Lewis #2, and now there's more on his record than he expected. So getting those things corrected. All right, so next slide. So there's a lot of ways you can handle identity theft. This is helpful in your lives too. I think it's so much of what we talk about, we're so focused on our clients. Identity theft happens a lot. Devin's had it happen to him. I've had it happen to me. Probably if I asked for hands, many hands would raise throughout the room. Our information's everywhere. Bad actors take advantage of it. So there's 3 different ways you can protect your identity. First, and kind of the lowest level, is a security freeze. And you can see a security freeze completely prevents your report from being shared with most third parties unless it's lifted. So when my identity was stolen, I put a credit freeze on all 3 of my credit bureau credit reports. And if I want to go buy a car, I have to actually go and lift that for a period of time when they run the credit check and then close it back down. But it keeps that window closed for as long as possible so that somebody else can't open up credit in your name. More things I have notes. It also helps ensure that creditors can't change anything on your credit report without your authorization. So your name, your address, social security number, date of birth, and it locks things down in a way that is completely manageable by the individual. That's kind of level 1. Honestly, I don't think you have to wait to get a victim identity theft to put a freeze on your accounts. And it's free in every state. All of these things are actually free. So there are services out there in the world that are completely free. And things related to identity theft really are. Second, you can put on initial alert. So an initial alert tells a financial institution to check with you before they open any line of credit or any type of credit, a new account under your name. And that's huge, because if you are who you say you are, you should have control over that. It helps to really ensure that it triggers that heightened verification. And that's what really is helpful in this case, because, you know, so often you think of, oh, I'm just gonna get this store credit card because, you know, I want the jacket at Macy's. That sounds really old school, I know. But, you know, there are plenty of store credit cards and all these things, like, you can't do that without having, you know, verified with you. So even if it's small amounts of credit, critical. And unlike a credit freeze, a fraud alert does not prevent businesses from seeing your credit report. It lasts for about a year and you can always re-up it. So it's helpful, of course, if you've been a victim of identity theft, but also it gives you access to additional free credit reports. Right now, it's kind of a non-issue because you can get weekly copies of your credit reports, which if you didn't know, it only used to be once a year. Now it's weekly. That's stayed since pretty much since COVID. But again, free in every state. Kind of the big dog of things you can do is an extended alert. An extended alert, the lenders verify, again, required to verify you before approving new credit. It triggers that heightened verification procedure. It does require an identity theft report. So either a police report, or also you can put a complaint in with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. That's also counts as a verifiable identity theft report. And similar, it also gives you extra credit reports. And one thing I do like about it is it also excludes you from pre-screening lists. So all of those things you get in the mail, like, hey, you're pre-approved. It does kind of tamp that down a little bit. And one other thing I wanted to mention, that stays in place for 7 years. So it's a little bit longer term. But again, those 3 ways are very helpful options depending on what level of identity theft has occurred, what level of stress somebody has, and what type of preventative effort somebody wants as well. The one you can do without actually having identity theft is the credit freeze, which makes me very, very happy. I hate it every time I try to buy something, but I do love it most of the year. Next slide.
Before we move on, I have a rabbit hole question.
Oh, I like rabbit holes.
You mentioned that the free credit report, you get one a week rather than one a year. From your perch, have you heard any rumblings about returning to the archaic system of once a year?
I have not heard any rumblings from my perch, but if we were to go back to that once a year, again, personal opinion, not the advice of the Bureau, getting them spread out over the course of the year, definitely helpful. This time you're checking the 3 major credit bureaus at 3 different points during the calendar year. So it's a hybrid approach, if you will. I like the rabbit hole, thanks. Next question, next slide, there we go.
I can come up with more questions.
I know, but, okay, so I mentioned submitting complaints. This is one of those resources that a lot of consumers don't necessarily know exists or know how it works. So CFPB has a portal for submitting consumer complaints. There are lots of government agencies that accept complaints, and it can be confusing. So the one thing I always say is that there's no one wrong place to go. Most all of us, to some degree, share information, but if you come to us first, we do share information with the FTC or can, you know, send those complaints. If it's not something that we handle, we can send off to another federal agency. So it's really quick, really easy. When people are out of the carceral environment, jails or prisons, and they're back in the community, it takes 10 minutes. We highly recommend that people submit on their own behalf, because it's a little harder when you're submitting on behalf of the client. So take a few minutes. Your client can do it while they're sitting with you. That would be helpful. Takes 10 minutes online. Or if they might speak a different language or just really not be comfortable with technology, because we know that when people leave, you know, prison or jail, struggle with that. You know, we can also have folks call. We take complaints in 180 different languages and do it between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. So this is a really, really good place to start. Even if you're not sure, Like, we can help and we'll ask questions, particularly if it's the phone call, you can ask a lot of questions right then and there, to kind of work through. And I will say too, you know, when they submit a complaint, they can also be advocates, not just for themselves and their rights, but also those of who come behind them. And I think that's one thing really about the justice impacted community. People don't want to leave their brothers and sisters behind. So if they are able to complain about an issue, that not only helps them, because we help to resolve those issues with the creditor or with the financial institution, but it helps us know what's going on. And if we know more and more of what is happening, then we're able to make those as a greater focus of our work, so we can help broader community. So, you know, it's not just complaining for yourself, you're complaining for people coming behind you. And next slide. Okay, I'm gonna stop there and ask if there's any questions on identity theft or complaint process. And I will definitely encourage you, if you come across anything that sounds like somebody's rights have been violated, encourage them to submit a complaint. It helps us to not only help that person, but also somebody else. Yeah.
One thing I appreciate about the CFPB complaint system is you can also query it for any topic. So if you're curious for common things that are happening or whatever you're working, could be anything, you can kind of see what some trends are. So I found that to be helpful. And you can like break it down by state and things like that too.
And even zip code in your state. So if you want to look at what's happening really local, you can do that. One thing I want to mention about complaints too, and I know I'm totally out of time, is that with the complaints, we don't have a drop down menu for people who have direct justice involvement. That's a good thing in some ways and a bad thing in some ways. A lot of people who have justice involvement don't want to have that be a label for them. That's totally understandable. Makes it really hard for us to focus on services and tools specifically for people who have lived experience. So, you know, if they're using keywords, we're able to search by that. You are too, when you're looking for what's happening in your communities. But it's kind of a double-edged sword in that, you know, I want to know exactly if they have any justice involvement, so I can focus my work on that in policy. But that's one thing that may not be something that's of concern for your clients, but food for thought. But I love the fact you mentioned the queryable. It's not just for us, it's for you all as well, to know what's happening in your community. And now it's Stefan's turn and I will shush.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, we are pretty much at the end of our day. So we want to just leave you with this one question, when and how might you use focus on reentry? So if you don't mind, on Zoom, if you want to put that in the chat, when and how you might use it, and those in the room, just raise your hand and just let us know. But we just want to just get an idea of what your plans are going forward. Now that you have this information, you've been given the resources around focus on reentry, and now what are your thoughts on when and how you may use this?
I mean, I love it. I like coming to sessions like these or just learning more tools and resources, because when I give financial empowerment classes or when I'm giving like the home ownership classes or working hand in hand with folks for a couple of months, getting them ready for the process. A lot of times in the very beginning, we talk about these certain things, and it's one of those where I always tell them like, look, the more you tell me, the more you communicate, the more I can help you out. So honesty is key. Just tell me your life story and I got you. And a lot of it usually will stem, will come with some things that stem from the justice system. And I think somebody here earlier was saying like, just build the confidence, like help them build the confidence. Let them know like, hey, I got you. This is just the beginning of the journey. We'll get you to your goal. Don't worry about it. You can go ahead and do it. I know you can. You've already overcome so many obstacles. And so I love this just because it opened up my eyes to a lot of topics and a lot of, let's say, financial struggles or things that will restrict them that I didn't even think about asking in the beforehand. A lot that I would let them kind of present, but now it's a lot that's sitting in the back of my mind where I'm like, all right, let me begin the conversation. Let me do a little bit more digging. So, no, I love this. I think it's gonna help me be a little bit better, better assistance and help to all the folks that I help out in the community going forward. So thank you.
You're welcome. Sounds great. Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Yeah.
I'm coming. So Nathan, who was here yesterday, is financial education, he's online, but I do narrowing the wealth gap at DFI. And so this is really helpful to kind of understand where some of our structures aren't working as well. So I had the opportunity to email some folks at the state to kind of learn about some of the questions that came up today. And so that was super, super helpful. So more to come. It's not really specific, but just, it was helpful to kind of understand where things seem like they should flow, but there's kind of some questions and gaps from like insurance, medical insurance and things like that, where there's counterparts of other agencies that would love to talk about it. So.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Abby.
We have some great answers in the chat as well. Pippa says, I'm planning to introduce it within the first few weeks of beginning to work with a justice involved client as we're discussing their goals. Becky shares, I will look at this as we think about how to provide financial literacy resources to patients who are being discharged from involuntary treatment facilities, psychiatric hospitals. And then Destiny says, I really like the tools such as the reentry debt log and spending tracker. I'll be using those with some of my current clients.
Wow, thank you, everyone. That is great to hear in terms of all these potential applications of this information. So thank you. All right, we're gonna move on here and move towards our closing. And so keep going. Yeah, so want to just remind you, those of you here yesterday, you saw the slide. Those of you who are seeing it for the first time, this is the CFPB's site where you can actually put in a question of any topic that you're interested in, and it will actually search their database and bring out to you to select to click which one of these articles or topics that you want to pursue. It's really pretty awesome. And so Ask CFPB is the name of that. And there is, you can actually Google Ask CFPB and it'll bring you right to it. So yeah, very, very awesome. All right, let's go to the next slide. And then I'm going to invite our CFPB colleagues up, Jill and Shana. I know Jill wanted to make a comment here on this final slide for ordering materials. And Rich, if you don't mind joining us as well, we close things down.
Great, thank you, Devin. And we can go on to the next slide, actually. As far as ordering materials, you can order from the website in small quantities, but as I mentioned, for those who were here yesterday, if you need larger quantities, just email our team directly. So you can reach us at yourmoneyyourgoals@cfpb.gov. And we'll work with you to get what you need. Either any print materials are free and the shipping is free. We can send to multiple locations. Our stock is low, but we're looking at creative ways to do co-branding and digital versions and see that demand for the print copies, understand how important they are to you all. And we're, the more we share, the more information we receive about your needs, the more we can make the case internally. And I do want to encourage you to go to the website. You can use the QR code here, but on the website, on the right-hand side, you can join our newsletter. And that newsletter serves a couple purposes. So one, we always share information on new materials and publications when it comes out. We also share some Bureau press releases. We focus on the content that would be relevant to this audience, the communities that we're serving, economically vulnerable people, and we share information and try to translate that in plain language to make it useful for everyone on our listserv. So that's a great way to stay up to date on what the Bureau's up to. And then we also announce webinars. We have some upcoming virtual events that will be sending out soon. We'll do a virtual session on the companion guide for people with disabilities later in February. So if you join our list, if you have any trouble, just reach out to our team inbox and happy to connect directly. I will take a moment now to just thank the presenters today and throughout the session. So Devin Stubblefield,
It's great to have you all here today. I also want to thank our amazing hosts and organizers. I will pass we have the amazing team in the back, Abby, Maya, Jennifer, and Ryan, who've been involved throughout all of the planning, collaboration. It's been great to have representatives from the state here, from the Attorney General's office and DFI. Amazing to collaborate with you all and look forward to staying in touch. It's been fascinating to see all of the energy and commitment and resources available in the communities throughout Washington State. So look forward to staying in touch with you all. I want to take a moment to give my colleagues a chance first. So thank you as well. But again, it's been a pleasure to be with you all here and online. Great crowd yesterday and today. Great to see you all in a virtual session as well.
I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to come into a group both virtually and here in person who care. You can't train somebody how to care. You can train somebody how to do the work that we're talking about here today, working with people who have criminal records and have justice involvement. You all, from the questions you raised to the comments you made, truly showed how much you care and how much you know that this is a critical part of people being successful in reentry and having communities that work for all of us. So thank you for your service, your work, and all of the great things that I know you will do with these resources going forward.
Dedication and to say briefly, don't grow weary of the well-doing. The work that we do every day truly does make a difference in the lives of people who are just as impacted and folks who really want to move forward and towards, self-sufficiency and towards financial empowerment. So thank you for being here every day.
Just want to say to our friends from Washington DC jail, Richard, thank you for coming to our wonderful state of Washington, where the best professionals on the planet live, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm just so fortunate to be among all of you. I mean, the work that we do collectively, even in our own respective areas, is just amazing, and it makes it very awesome to have partners at the federal level to come through like this. But I can tell you guys know I go all around the country and I brag on Washington all the time. So because you guys are just awesome. We've kind of, those of us who've been around for a while, we've kind of grew into this together. I could say Jennifer and we started out way back when financial coaching was just beginning to be a thing in our state. And we've just been kind of connected ever since. And so she's doing a tremendous job as the executive director. And let's give just. Yeah, she's definitely done a tremendous job to really make FIN be what I believe what it's supposed to be, a model for the nation in terms of this type of work. So thank you, Abby, Brian, you guys are, and also Evelyn, thank you so much for your contribution. Folks here in the building, thank you so much. That's all we have for now. So we'll see you next time, Abby. Yeah.
One quick thing, and we put it in the chat for those on Zoom, but we really value your feedback and would love to get an evaluation. That link is in the chat. If you were here yesterday, you can fill one out for yesterday and then also one for today. You get 2 gold stars. So we really love to hear from you. For the folks in person, we will send we'll send an after email to everyone, but that will also include the link for the post evaluation, because we want to hear from you. What went well? What could we do better? What else do you want to learn as we move forward? So thank you, everyone. On behalf of FEN, thank you all for coming all this way and for all your work for making this happen. And we appreciate you a lot. So thanks.